Let me bring your attention to Neptune. Neptune entered Pisces 2011 until the current year, 2025. And I want to remind you that what came with that is a blurring of the lines, a confusion, a fog. And it had a lot to do with social media and spiritual, Luciferic knowledge as a revolution that made it unclear what the truth really is. I remember when this began, that time period was during the Obama era. And this time period was when the masses began to identify through social media at an accelerated rate, where Facebook, Instagram, social media application, apps, social media accounts, social media presence. It wasn't something that someone you knew, or you knew someone who knew. It merged into a status where it was strange if you didn't have one at that point. You don't have a social media account. You don't have Facebook. You don't have Instagram. You don't have YouTube. You don't have all of these, social media presence or connection. You now would be seen as strange, if you were not an elder. That's when it became the norm during the Obama era. What also went with this, I want to remind you, is that it opened a Pandora's box. And that Pandora's box, it blurred the lines. Everything that we thought we understood about how we wanted to show up for life, how we did things, what you're supposed to do when you grow up, what's the most appropriate thing for you to strive to become, what did your forefathers do, what is traditional, what makes sense, what do you believe in, what is true or not true, your ancestral beliefs, religions, things of that nature. All of this became challenged by the internet, including your identity, what you thought of yourself, what you concluded about yourself, what you believe of yourself, what you know of yourself, and the confidence or self-esteem that you were able to have in who you are. The self-acceptance that you were able to experience with yourself. Not comparing yourself with thousands and thousands and thousands of images and faces and bodies and status. If some of you out there are close to my age, older or younger, you'll know that there was life before the internet. I was born in 1983, and there was a different life before the internet. When you wanted to talk to girls, you had to go up to them and you had to get their number. You would write it on a piece of paper. You would write it on your hand. You would memorize it. You couldn't call her right away. You'd have to make it home and use the house phone. And you took your chances with that because your mother would embarrass you. You know, you're on the phone and she picks up the phone on the other end. Get off my damn phone. You know, who you talking to on my phone? I got to use my phone. You know what I mean? You stretch the phone cord all the way into your room. You on the phone all night holding up the line. You know, things were so different. When it came to your self-esteem, there were very few to compare yourself to. Even if you was from a big city like me, you know, there was still the handful of personalities and faces that you really paid attention to, you know, who you admired, looked up to, or compared yourself to, you know, to get an idea of, you know, what is greatness for me, you know, what is high performance for me, you know, hey, look at that guy, you know, I want muscles like that, you know, he's in shape. Maybe I should, you know, ask him for a few pointers, you know, hey, look at this guy's car, he got a nice car, you know, what he do, you know, you find out, you know what I'm saying, he, you know, he moving some weight, you know what I'm saying, you try to do your little thing with it too, you know what I'm saying, on the block, all that. My man's with the Avarex jackets on, and you know what I'm saying, Timberland boots, iceberg, and all the other stuff, chains and trunk jewelry, you know, standing outside Kennedy Fries, you know, in New York. And you know, you getting hyped up and you looking at your little idols in front of you. You know what I mean? And you get hype off all of that. But the point I'm making is that who we looked up to was right in front of us, right across the street. You know, it was in the same building. It was en route of our daily routine. You know what I'm saying? And it wasn't thousands of profiles we were looking through of people who put pictures on the internet of perfection, even though once they put that phone down, they are not perfect. You know, they show you the pictures that they want you to see. They show you the image that they want you to believe about them or think about them. But the rest of the story, you don't get to see or hear that. You know what I mean? But nonetheless, you're comparing yourself to all these Instagram models. You know what I'm saying? You might be a girl who's regular, less curvy, or even less pretty or whatever else. And you're underestimating yourself or, you know, criticizing yourself because these pictures are just flooding the algorithm, you know, and now your self-esteem is dropping. This was during times, okay, 2011, just think. We wasn't prepared for that. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have the inner technology. We didn't have the spiritual fortification and technology to be able to know how to deal with that overwhelm. The overwhelm of having a cell phone in your hand every day. When we came from the generations of you get up in the morning, you leave the house, and the only time you'll use a phone when you leave the house was at a payphone. You know what I'm saying? The dope boys, you know what I mean? They used to have cell phones. I remember that. You know what I'm saying? All the, you know, a lot of the street niggas had, you know what I'm saying, they had cell phones, you know what I mean? But, you know, or pages. You know what I mean? They had pages. But you would have to go to a payphone. Or you go to, you know, your friend's house and use a phone, or you know what I mean? You have to go to a building to use a landline phone. So conversations was face to face. You know what I mean? When you socialize, you got up with people. Yo, where y'all gonna be at? Yo, y'all gonna be at the park? You know what I'm saying? Where y'all niggas at today? You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we in Harlem. You know what I'm saying? Gonna be playing ball. You know, we're gonna be at the court. You know, in the Bronx, whatever. You know what I'm saying? We gonna be over here. We gonna be over there. You know, everybody get up. You bring your crew. They bring your crew. You know what I'm saying? Everybody chilling and all that. You know, you had to get active. As children, you know, you left the house all day. You come in with scabs and grass stains, or, you know what I'm saying? You smell like outside. You know, it. I think I'm getting a little nostalgic, you know what I'm saying, as I'm going through it. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get you to, you know, I'm trying to connect to you through feeling right now. You know what I'm saying? That's what I want to do. I want you to remember that there was a world before 2011. All right? There was a world before Neptune came into Pisces. There was a world before that. That world before that, it was personally connected, and we had limited knowledge and understanding of what was beyond our immediate communities. All right? Also, knowledge and information, you had to labor for it before that time, if you all remember that, okay? I come from that generation. I come from the generation where consciousness was something that you had to labor for, all right? 2011, that's when all of these conscious, self-proclaimed teachers, you know what I mean, scholars and all this, everybody is deep. Everybody's a scholar. Everybody's a teacher. Everybody's conscious. Everybody's a vegan. You know what I mean? Everybody talking about Dr. Sabi and Dr. Umar, hidden colors and all these theories and theology. Everybody was coming out the woodworks, lying like a motherfucker about what they know. Lying like a motherfucker about what they claim to understand and claim to be qualified to teach the people. All right? That's what came with the internet becoming local to the palm of every citizen's hand. All right? Because before 2011, the internet was a thing, you know what I mean? But that was more of, you know, what was that called? Black Planet. You know what I'm saying? People Meet, AOL dial-up. You know what I'm saying? Where you do the ear, you know what I'm saying? And the landline is hung up off of that. You got to wait mad long for everything to dial, you know, to dial up and download. You know, it was a slow pace, you know, which is why people of my generation or back, we have a longer attention span. You know what I'm saying? Our attention span is long as fuck because we didn't get everything at 5G. We didn't get everything at 4G. Shit, we didn't even get everything at 3G. You know what I'm saying? It was slow dial, so we got hella patience. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of patience in us. When you wanted to become a person who teaches, you know, consciousness or you know, esoteric and mysteries and things of that nature, you really had to be that person. Because if you wouldn't make it. All right? And I'm saying this as being that person because to learn things, you would have to walk to to the library consistently, or ride your bike, catch the train or the bus, as a youngster, you would have to sit amongst learned people and get information from them if they cared enough to give you it. Because back then, people didn't give you knowledge, people didn't give you information so easy. You had to earn it. They had to respect you or trust you enough to give it to you. I'm telling you what I've done, and I'm telling you what I know. This is how I became who I am. You know what I mean? I didn't go to my teachers in one visit to get information and get an understanding. I had to show that I was trustworthy with it. It took years to even be able to speak among them. You know what I mean? It took years to even be able to open my mouth among the learned people. Because to open your mouth and you're not qualified, that's a real problem. You know what I mean? You really violating. Like, nigga, why is you even talking? Who the fuck are you? You know what I'm saying? That's how it was back in the day. I'm telling you what I know. You know what I'm saying? I grew up in a 5% nation of gods and earths. I grew up in the nation of Islam. I grew up in the Salafi Sunni madhab, Hanbali. I'm telling you what I know. I grew up in Noble Drew Ali's teachings. Yeah, I grew up in Pan-Africanism, Marcus Garvey's teachings. I grew up in Nuwapian's teachings. That's the world I come from. I grew up on Rudolf Steiner and his teachings and theologies. Rudolf Steiner especially. You know what I mean? And Rastafarians too. You know what I'm saying? Brother Branham, back in the day, a Christian. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying, man, is that there was a world before 2011, and it authorized us to really be the teachers who we are today. And that's what a lot of people who got on the wave of 2011, the introduction of global internet, the globalization of the internet speed, it confused things a little bit because it made it unclear who is who. You know what I mean? I remember watching during that time period, 2011, when, as the internet got more popular, it was during the riots, the Black Lives Matter riots. And this was right after some of those, gay girls from Black Lives Matter, they took my content that I had back in the day, and they was moving it around and twisting, the things that I was teaching and explaining way back then. And, we got on the radio show and, we had exchange of words and, anyway, the shit pissed me off with how it turned out and them, misrepresenting the things that I teach with their movement. And then some weeks later, they ended up allowing themselves to be infiltrated to start all this rioting stuff that was going on. You know what I mean? And, Black Lives Matter, some bullshit. But during that time period, everybody thought they was qualified to be teachers, scholars, and conscious, guides. And what it ended up doing was it confused everybody, because the process of preparation, the process of coming to knowledge and wisdom, it all was skipped. Because the internet allows you to produce an illusion of who you are to the world. Okay, illusion, Neptune. You can produce a phantom of yourself and present it to the world, and that's not even you. You know what I'm saying? You flip through a couple of books, you watch some YouTube, and then you get up here and start regurgitating shit to people. And now people think that you on like that. People think that you really like that, and you're not. You know what I'm saying? People think that you understand things, and you don't. You're simply reciting, you're regurgitating, but you're not explaining. You know what I mean? And a lot of that came out. And on top of that, the beauty. Because everything became visible. So you add titties, you add pretty skin, pretty faces, nice clothes. You know what I'm saying? You show some nipples, you show some cleavage, you show some camel toe, you know what I mean? And you blend all that with what somebody's serving. Now witchcraft is being served through this. You know what I mean? Because people, they don't have a defense against that. You got to remember. The people did not have a defense against what was coming. There was no inner spiritual technology to defend themselves against that advancement of witchcraft that moved through the internet. It was like an electric monster, you know what I'm saying, that possessed the people, and they didn't even have a defense against it. They think that what is true is false, and they think what is false is true. They think the lie is the truth, and they think the truth is a lie. It went backwards. You know what I mean? They started basing things on who got the most likes, who got the most followers, you know, who got the most popularity, who looks the best, who has the best presentation. And that became the ideal of value. You know what I'm saying? I went the long route to basically explain that Neptune brought a fog. It brought a fog back home to Neptune, you know, to Pisces. Through the internet, it fogged the mentality of everyone. It dissolved the forms that we made sense of life through. And the things of our identity that allowed us to, you know, feel self-esteem and confidence, that got challenged too. Because how many little girls was looking on the internet and seeing all these Instagram models, you know what I'm saying, and then look back at themselves like, you know, I'm not pretty enough. You know? How many guys is looking at all these, you know, people on the internet who's saying, yeah, you got to get to the bag, and this is how you get successful, and, you know, rich quick schemes and all, you know, it was just a highway of lies, illusions, magicians, witches, warlocks, you know what I mean? Shapeshifters, all of that. It's not a real world. But it's a painful reality to those who came from the real world. You know, the 80s babies, the 90s babies, the 70s, the 60s babies, you know what I'm saying? A painful thing like, damn, yo, this ain't even real. These people they all fake, you know? And what they're doing isn't genuine, it's not sincere, it's not, you know, it's not real. Why am I bringing all this up is that there's benefit to it. because it made the world smaller. It made what was far local. It made what was inaccessible accessible. It made rare information instantaneous. You know, what would take months or even years of studying through the Dewey Decimal System, reference books, talking to qualified teachers, borrowing books, taking notes, memorizing. You know what I'm saying? To come to the right conclusion, you now can swipe and get an answer. That's the labor that I came from, and now you can swipe to get an answer. And looking close, it might be hard to see what's the difference there. You know what I mean? The difference there is that the internet was able to pass around knowledge and information, but not necessarily wisdom. Most people who look on the internet, their attention span is not long enough to absorb wisdom. That's part of the mysterious trick. Most of the people who are on the internet, they have short attention spans. A short attention span cannot absorb wisdom. It can't comprehend it. It can't catch it. It goes right over your head. You can't receive wisdom with a short attention span. That's one of the main differences. So the ones who are there talking fast and talking fancy is Luciferic. You're getting the information, you're listening, but it's very limited what you can actually apply to your life because it's information. Wisdom is a different thing. It changes your life. A library of knowledge compared to a drop of wisdom. You see, wisdom is like knowledge concentrate. You know what I mean? You got 5 gallons of, Ajax, right? And then you got a little bottle of Ajax concentrate. And you look at the label and it says makes 10 gallons. You know what I mean? That's wisdom. It makes 10 gallons of knowledge. One little drop. But you can't absorb it with a short attention span. That's where that number 9, South Node Virgo, comes in. Virgo catches all details. It doesn't miss anything. It catches every detail. You see how that works? South Node Virgo is giving us back the attention span that we lost through the Pisces Neptune transit. Because at 9, it grounds you into a state of isolation that forces concentration. Sobriety, a sober mind state, a sober heart. The internet is something that gives you an opposite effect. And when you can get sober and grounded, when you can get still enough, slow down your heart rate, you can catch wisdom. You will notice wisdom. You will recognize wisdom. You will receive wisdom. You will comprehend wisdom. And wisdom is the principal thing. Thus, Aquarius Pluto, wisdom. This is the return. Wisdom has to assist the recovery of the divine identity. Aries Neptune. But we can't forget the window we went through, 2011 to 2025. There was a world before then that was of the Capricorn form. Remember? Rothschild, Rockefeller, the Capricorn theory, Christian theology, lifestyle. You know what I mean? And for those of the North, including Muslim theology, lifestyle. In other words, Saturn, okay? Saturn lifestyles, Saturn theology, Saturn religion, Saturnian religions. The Abrahamic religions, Saturnian religions, Abrahamic religions. You know what I mean? Islam is Saturn conjunct Venus. Christianity, Saturn conjunct Sun and Neptune. By the way, that symbol, okay, that's often referred to Islamically, of the crescent and the green colors, that's Venus. All right, it's not this. That's not the moon. Let's get that understood. That's Venus. All right. Thought I'd clear that up. Green represents oxidation of copper. It also represents the green emerald of Lucifer. Understand? It's Luciferic. Okay? It's Islamic sciences from the Moors that gave the world its Renaissance revolution in the sciences and arts. Okay? That came through the letter of Arabic, alchemy, architecture, the arts, mathematics, all of that. Okay? Luciferic. See what I'm saying? See how all of that works? But anyway, let me get back on task. So, 2011, 2025 Pisces. We're recovering from that as Neptune comes out of that. Why? Because it was a lesson. Saturn transiting through Pisces, it was holding us accountable to our karmic lessons that we absorbed or that we placed on the scale during that time period, 2011 to 25. Okay? You had to address what karma you absorbed from that. And if you look very closely, a lot of that karma would have found new form from past life. Okay, listen, it would have found new form from past life, which is your 12th house. It would have found new form from past life, your 12th house, new form, okay, during the time period of Neptune, 2011, 2025 transit through Pisces. And that new form was through the internet. It was through influences that you got off of the internet, the social media world, and the global programming that came from that. And what it did was it opposed the natural expression of the identity. It challenged your acceptance of yourself. It placed contradiction between your instincts, your intuition, and self-expression. Cognitive dissonance, doubt, guilt, shame, fear for being exactly who you know you're supposed to be. And in order to fit in with the global algorithm through that internet, which made its way out in the algorithms of societal norms, you would fear to go against that, which meant to produce shadows Shadows are suppressions of the natural expression of the self. Okay? So you would produce shadows. Saturn was facing you with all of that so you could free it all. Let me give you an example of one of those, right? Through the internet, you finally realize that if you took a little clothes off, you show a little something, you turn the camera on yourself, and you give them a little, a little sex influence, okay? You would get more attention, you would get more likes, you would get cash apps, you would get, PayPal, you would get comments in the comment section, you would get validation, you would get dopamine hits, okay? Pisces represents those things, okay? Dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, you would get those hits. So you would tell yourself that that's not your intention. And you would justify it, for example, by saying, you put up a post like, no matter what happens, just think positive vibes only, but you on there showing ass and titties. You know what I mean? Are you here to motivate people, or are you here to thirst trap? You see what I'm saying? So you thirst trapping for the validation and the dopamine hit, but you're expressing it as, I'm here to motivate people and tell them positive vibes only. You know what I mean? I'm here to tell people how to be a vegan, but conveniently everybody see your nipples and your camel toe and all this other stuff, right? Okay, so it's you pretending like you don't know what you're selling. You're selling something. You know you're selling what you're selling, but you're pretending like you don't know what it is that you're selling. And everybody else knows what you're selling. And they also know that you're pretending like you don't know what you're selling. And if they say something about what you're selling, you will hold them accountable, but you will refuse to be held accountable for it, you see. And so Saturn will present you with the fear and crisis of knowing that it's time to let that go, if you are to regain your dignity, self-respect, if you are to regain your true identity and expression, making it consistent and sincere. If you are to do that, it means you have to confront where you stand in contradiction with your values, with what you know to be right or true. You see, it's things like that that Saturn presents. What are you going to do now? And these are residues of the internet era. The internet era. You see, we all became someone who we probably didn't come here to be, but there was some gain or benefit in selling that part of ourselves, South Node Virgo is how we take it back. That's the way, because it holds the Hermit card. You can only get it back by going within and sterilizing yourself and your environment from the contamination of other people's influences into your perception of yourself, and other people's influences into your self-esteem of yourself, your value of yourself, your ideal of yourself. You have to sterilize all of that and come back to the heart being the source of where all of your values and value comes from. It has to come from your own heart. And what comes from the heart, there is no harm in it. There's no lie in it. There's no oppression. There's no injustice. There's no inconsistency. There's no lie if it's from the heart. And when that's the case, when we are really coming from the heart, our conscience is clear. And when the conscience is clear, the expression is maximized. You see, the expression is perfected. The expression carries fire of the sun because of all of these things. Full conviction. Full conviction. But the more corruption we put in our character, our image, our mind, our behaviors, our ways, we fill our subconscious with doubt and guilt. Fear. Because of the contradictions that we hold within ourselves, in our nature. Our nature is the image of God. It is the image and likeness of God. So when we are in contradiction with that nature, with that image, it fogs the mind and it causes our expression to stall, to reduce. It puts the flame out. I think I'm all over the place with this, speaking of Pisces, you know what I mean? But I'm just going to keep going, you know what I'm saying? Well, part of what I'm speaking about here is that Neptune will be going back into Pisces soon. But I want to remind you that Neptune retrograde begins July 4th out of Aries, 2 degrees, going back to Pisces, 29 degrees. At Aries, Neptune direct is introducing us to a crisis, a fork in a road, and a duality. Okay? A crisis, a fork in the road, and a duality. And that is, it's connecting our awareness to the dissolve of the self who's living a lie, and the conceptualization of the self who wants to live in truth. That's what it is. Okay? Full weight. Full weight. The dissolve of the lie, it's scary. It's very scary. How am I going to let this go? Because the way I became this image of a lie is fear. I only lied because of fear, cowardice, guilt. That's how I became this person who I'm really not. Conformity, fear of the consequences. The consequences of abandonment, rejection, isolation, not being accepted or fitting in, not receiving what I perceived as love, care, affection, support, camaraderie, friendship, so on and so forth. I was willing to sell my soul to feel like I was receiving those things. And Neptune gives us the view of ourself in that crisis, letting us know what needs to dissolve. It makes us fully aware of that in our person, in our being, what is in contradiction with my first house, the expression of the self who I know I am supposed to be. Aries, what I know I am naturally inclined to assert throughout my life. And it is harmonious with my heart, soul, urge expression. Why am I not being it? Because of these fears and guilt and shame. that you consented to in your life. Remember, part of that crisis with the identity is that lack of identity, lack of acceptance of the identity. It affects your standing. And your standing affects your jurisdiction. Your jurisdiction affects how adjudication takes place in your life, karmically and socially. Do you see how that works? We're at an identity crisis coming out of the timeline where we all were addicted to internet false realities and what it made of us. What it made of us is a reflection of that pool of illusion. It's a pool of illusion, and we became the reflection of it. You are what you eat. Or better expression, you are what you consume. And we became that. Just like it is superficial and fake, you became superficial and fake. Something that you're really not. There was a world before that. There was a world before that. And the world before that, it was full of fear of evolving out of the rings of Saturn. Saturn broke the time continuum from the heavens. It was Saturn. Saturn broke eternity from infinity. And that's how the time continuum began. And we became limited in fear within the ring of Saturn through its first expression, Capricorn. But now we've come full circle to step into the outer rings of Saturn, but we had to dissolve before we got there. So Neptune through Pisces, it was a dissolve of that by returning to the source, spirit, which is formlessness. That formlessness, it has its origins with imagination when it relates to the self, the being, the body. But that imagination cannot see itself or comprehend itself without reflection. So what better reflection of imagination than the internet? The internet is a reflection of imagination, which allowed us to realize the reflection of our own imagination. It's like looking at water. Whatever you think, instantly, you see the image. Whatever you desire. Whatever you want to see, you type it in, you look it up. Or you speak into it, and it appears as an image. It's imitating your imagination. You have a little girl who wants to be a beautiful princess before the internet. She look at cartoons and movies, magazines, and she'd use her imagination. something to give her reflection of her imagination. The internet expanded the reflection of our own imagination, exposing us to our own imaginations. The imagination is the only way to dissolve the form that we descended into through Abrahamic religions, okay, which was necessary. But we had to go through the imagination to go beyond that form, dissolve. Okay, Pisces is what dissolves form. And the proof of that is it leaves an imprint, it leaves a fingerprint, it leaves a replication of your imagination. For example, the algorithm on your phone, your search history, your call log. What do you search for the most? What do you watch the most? Who do you talk to in your call list the most? What type of apps do you have in your phone? Pictures. What type of music do you listen to? Everyone's cell phone is a fingerprint of their imagination. Do you see how that worked? And so now that we manifested a means of seeing the proof of our imagination and the state, the condition that it is in, we're headed to Aries with the satellite of our imagination, Neptune, to initiate an intentional concept of ourself that has survived being impressed by every thought or image, being misled by every thought or image. See, thoughts come in the mind, but we must control them. We must authorize them or not. We must give them permission or not, access or not. We have to select thoughts, select images. Neptune is carrying the history of that 2011-2025 to the identity Aries, giving us the chance to have conclusive evidence of what our imaginations have become, and we have become the product or image of our own imagination in our life. The retrograde will allow us to put our hand in that water and take out every shark, every evil creature or fish, pull it out. Every sea monster, and pull it out. The retrograde will allow us to notice what we have done with our imaginations, where we have gone too far with it, and where we have failed to utilize the power of it towards our own ideal and identity. We're leaving the phase of us being impressed by what's on the internet. This could not have taken place before 2011. Impossible. Because before 2011, even until the recent year, we are far too impressed by what's on the internet and what it can do, what it can show us, how it can make us feel, what it can make us think, what it can connect us to. We were too impressed by it to realize ourself outside of it. You have to be able to realize yourself as, for example, you imagine your astral body leaving your physical body, looking back at yourself and your history with the internet and what it has made of you. Okay? That's what it is. Okay? And when we come to the point where we're no longer impressed with these things, now we're ready to take command of our imaginations. Now we can. Because everything that primed, stimulated, overwhelmed the imagination, we now have technology for it. We know now how to face illusions, delusions, witchcraft, sorcery, magic through electricity. Sensualization of, okay? And what carries that electricity, that electrical being? Uranus through Taurus, which Taurus represents the spinal cord and cerebral, where the nervous system connects with the sensory system, which informs the astral body. You see, that electricity. And now it's carrying into Gemini, which is to no longer be possessed by it, but to be informed by it. So we no longer are possessed by these impressive realities and possibilities through the imagination, but we now are informed by those limitations and possibilities, which puts us in command as masters of these energies and forces. You cannot stand at that authority if you are still impressed with it. It's just like women. Say, where did that come from? You're not going to do a good job with women if you're impressed by them. Women aren't going to be able to feel confident walking behind you, trusting your judgment, respecting your leadership, if they get a sense that you're impressed by her. You see? That's part of plural marriage, which I won't go all the way into spoiling this discourse, but when a man takes on more than one woman at a time, if he is impressed by those women, he's in a crisis. It is not for men who are impressed by women. It is for men who make utility of their gifts, their powers, their influence, their wisdom, their experience, while loving them. But to be impressed by them, he already lacks authority, strength, confidence, and clarity. He has to be in a sober state to administer fairness, justice, equality. You cannot deal in equality with more than one woman at the same time, obviously. If you are impressed with them, you can only achieve that when you are not impressed by them. It impairs your judgment. So here's the same thing with the internet. We can't utilize that world to our advantage if we are impressed by what's in it, what's of it. So as Uranus moves into Gemini, what happens with us is we realize the opportunity of it. Now that we are not impressed by it. That's how it works. You don't reach mastery of a force or an energy until you have become sober with it. You ask any master, a bricklayer, a boxer, a gymnast. When you know a person is a master, when you see that they're not impressed with what they're doing. They're inspired by it, motivated, but they're not impressed. When you're impressed, you're not the master. If you've been laying bricks for 30 years, you've been welding for 30 years, you've been boxing for 30 years, you've been fixing cars for 30 years, you are not impressed with those things. That is when the mastery comes. Do you see where I'm going? We're receiving mastery of Uranus, Shango, his forces, Aquarius, but that was through the catalog of 2011-2025 Neptune Pisces. We just got through the karma of that, which released which taught us authority with it, okay? It taught us authority with it by moving through the karma with it. This happens at the same time that that Uranus enters Gemini. You see? So now, instead of it possessing the being, as I explained with Taurus and Venus algorithm, it now becomes a matter of Gemini ethereal force, which is what if? What if? What, when, where, how, why? What is possible? What is possible? When Uranus moves into Gemini, it takes the electrical world and asks what is possible of the electrical world through ethereal opportunities. Information pairing with electrical opportunities. And we becoming masters of that because we've come through the phase of our humanity that is impressed with celebrity culture, pictures of bodies and images, lust, lifestyles, so on and so forth. We have been taught to let go of being so impressed by these things. And it could not happen until then that we have the return to the true identity, because that was in the way of the true identity being impressed by those things. I think you understand that. I know it seems like I'm all over the place with this. I see it, and I'm attempting to explain it the best way that I'm seeing it. I'm hoping that I'm conveying, effectively here. The Neptune retrograde, it carries that lesson that I have been emphasizing. Who are you? Your identity. Because your identity is what's going to determine your status. Your status determines your jurisdiction, and your jurisdiction determines adjudication that you could expect. And this is in the biological person, the ethereal person, the astral person, the ancestral person. Every being of the self, including the incorporated person. Do you understand that? I ask you, do you understand that? I hope so. Because where we're going Ignorance is not going to be an excuse. You better know. You better know. Who are you? No. No. Who are you? Who are you? I need you to know. Neptune retrograde Aries is going to have you to clear the confusion and the fog around what it means to let go of what's preventing the formation of the authentic self. And to also find the faith, the imagination, the groundedness to home in on what it's going to take to form this self. And we'll have 5 months to do that. It's a review. Stepping back into Pisces, 29th degree, it shows you the parts of yourself that you have to recover, deliver, as deliverance that is, send into the wilderness so that it can be freed concerning Pisces. You still left some crumbs there. You got garbage bags by the door at Pisces, and you're gonna go get it. What did you leave there that you thought wouldn't be seen, that you thought wouldn't be known, that you thought probably didn't count much? What did you leave there? You're going to go back and get it when Neptune goes to the 29th degree. There's a finality concerning our presence in social media, online. There's a finality in the hesitation to claim who you are. There is a finality in releasing fear from the imagination and guilt and shame. There's a finality. Be prepared for it. Who are you? You're gonna need to know. You're going to need to know who you are. Your natal birth chart reading is a great way to start. The advancements of the internet, especially, remember the time period, 2011 when Neptune entered Pisces. What else happened during that time, right? Instagram, I believe, hit the market 2010, and the features advanced rapidly every year thereafter. Okay, so look at what we're getting access to during this time period. All right, visuals, images, imagination, pictures. You see, Neptune Pisces amplified. You see how that works. So just think about this. That was us being introduced to the potential of our ability to experience, relate with, be subject to, and command the impulses of our imagination and astral body. I want you to think about that. Were it not for the internet and specific apps such as Instagram, Facebook, with their images, pictures, sensualization through that, triggers, okay? The internet has the ability to touch every single sensory perception that you have. It can make you happy, angry, sad, depressed, so on and so forth, okay? It can make people kill. All of that. Through these energy channels. So what the internet did was it exposed us to the full, I can't even say full range. It exposed us to a higher range of our experience with ourselves through our senses and imagination. And what that ended up doing in the long run is it taught us how to take command of those frequencies, even as they took us down longer ranges of our astral body and imagination, impulses and behaviors, in which we had to come up with the spiritual technology, the ethereal technology within the self to take command of what it did to us, what it does to us. When you have that capability, okay, the person post Instagram and the person pre-Instagram, they have two totally different sets of spiritual technology within the being. Imagine you take this half-naked woman, right? Like she just came off Instagram, and you take a dude who never ever seen the internet, who never seen all the pictures and images and all this stuff. You know, he never been exposed to that. Just came home, I don't know, let's say he just came home from prison and he never even seen any of that stuff, right? And he's around this creature who adorned herself according to the potential and possibilities, the range of possibilities that she's been exposed to and how she could adorn herself. The range of possibilities of how a woman can beautify herself through infinite information of the internet versus the woman who had a local observation of options of how to beautify herself. Those are two totally different women in appearance. I hope you're catching on to what I'm saying here. So the internet era, it equipped us with complete awareness of our astral impulses in our imagination and complete awareness of what its potential is, what it can do and what it can't do. What hurts it, what harms it, what puts me in a bad position with it, what brings me good fortune, where I need to show authority, where I need to keep command and watch and control, where I need to show accountability, where I need to have a moral command of myself. Were it not for the internet, we would never know the depth of ourself when it comes to this. And this is what makes that also Luciferic. You have to remember, God sent Adam, Eve, and Lucifer down to earth out of the garden. They went down together. And with them going down together, who is the teacher? The teacher was Lucifer. You've got to remember that. Lucifer was the teacher. Eve was the one who consented to his offer of gnosis. And because of that, we all are here for the purpose of gnosis. And that's part of the gnosis. But who's the teacher of gnosis? Lucifer is the teacher of gnosis. He's the one who makes you aware of who you are. He's the one who shows you your ugly and your beauty without judgment of it, leaving it to you. And whether or not it is true that you stand in the image and likeness of God, he allows you to make that contradiction or not. He may suggest to you, but it will always be your decision. So with access to all of this in your imagination and your sensory perception, we are a different being, capable of maneuvering very high Luciferic witchcraft, magic, sorcery, temptations that moves through our bodies while still keeping command of the self, seeing the reality through these illusions and sensory perceptions, stimulants. Imagine spending from 2011 to 2025 exposed to all kinds of women and pornography on the internet, Instagram, models and consumerism, products, European fashion, expensive clothes and cars and jewelry, dances and songs, ideas, jokes, all types of content. Our imagination has had a deep dive plunge into what is possible. And what is the reflective manifestation of that? Follow me. AI technology. You see, that's the reflective technology. The AI technology is within the self as well. The AI technology takes a culmination of all internet algorithms, data input and output, and it gives it a free judgment and personality to imply and infer. What is imply and infer? That is Gemini, to imply and infer. Gemini rules which house? It rules the third house. The third house is the house that teaches us about you, about the self in the natal chart of how you imply and how you infer. The third house. That is AI technology. It is the internet's culmination of that power to imply and infer. Be it robots or internet caricatures who have consciousness. So Uranus going through Gemini, it makes that of us. And what is it about that makes us a master of our own AI within the self? It is our experiences that we have culminated through the internet era that allows us to step outside of that sensory reality, personalizing it, being attached to it, addicted to it, or ruled and controlled by it. And that is what allows us to be a natural person who faces the created entity of this culmination of internet experiences within the being. We now are two separate beings. There is you, the natural person, who's in command of the culmination of all of your experiences, knowledge, and potential through the internet reality or world. Thus, you stepping into a separate dimension. This is you giving a new body to a new dimension while your old body is still here in this dimension through presence of an AI figure of the self in the spirit in that technology. So Uranus through Gemini is to become a master of that AI technological spiritual form within the self that relates to this world, but it's not of that technological world, meaning being subject to it. And the only thing that puts us in that position to where we are not subject to it is the number 9 Virgo South node that goes against the detriment of Venus, which is the detriment of the astral body, teaching you to separate the higher being from the astral body and take command of it. And that becomes an AI form of the self that you could utilize when needed, but it cannot rule or command you because you're the one who programmed it. That part of the self. And that is the part of the self that you will utilize in the straw man, the incorporated man. Because remember, we're coming out of the self who is the straw man. We're coming out of the self who is the incorporated man. We're coming out of the Capricorn theory of the self. We're coming out of the self who is the fictitious character. We're coming back into the natural person, the image of God, the likeness of God, he who cannot be imitated. But you're leaving behind an AI spiritual technology of the self that was informed and culminated by your lifetime through the internet. That was very difficult to explain. I still don't feel satisfied in how I explained it, but believe me, I will keep trying. Now, farther along ahead, what's coming is we're going back to a sense of tribalism in the world, but it will be after a form of civil war that takes place in every continent. Right now, the great emphasis is identity, ancestral recalling, nationalities, claims of nationalities. Right now, the great call is status. What is everyone's status? And everyone, through karma, is being made to return to their proper status, the origins of their status, the homes of their status, the foundations of their status. And from there will be internal fighting and disagreements. And the reason is because those who will end up returning to their origins, they will carry the Uranus energy of revolution and change. They will be the visionaries of Neptune that brings the fire of assertive Aries and the steady flame of Leo as the inner child's expression. They will bring that heat to the stagnant ones of every community who failed to evolve, and they will hold them accountable. And whoever doesn't want to grow, evolve, become better, perfect their self, their own people are going to fight them. That is what is coming. Everyone's going to go back home, and you see it already happening. The Haitians are up next, August 3rd, to go back home. Every people is going back home. And when every people goes back home, they're going to fight. And when they go home to fight, they're going to force a change to take place within that home, within that natural origin. And the change is to bring the people back to satisfactory status, fair jurisdiction, proper jurisdiction. An identity that is ideal. The Neptune retrograde from Aries back into Pisces, what it indicates is the return of everyone back to their origins. It's a return. And as you see Cancer Jupiter transit, we have a whole year of this review. Cancer represents the home, the nationality, your ancestral origins, who you are, the home of your forefathers and mothers, where your identity was nurtured. And Jupiter has enough capacity to embrace this great movement of everyone go home. And when you go home, the ones who are the visionaries, they will fight the ones who are stagnant. Can you see?